We are closing up the evidence portion of the Hargis trial today. There will be several witnesses that will give their testimonies. However, we won't have very much information about what they said on the stand. Instead, we will get the very broadest of paint strokes to get a glimpse of their testimonies. Come along with us as we walk through what was reported about the ending testimonies of the Hargis Murder Trial of the spring of 1905. All aboard the Kentucky-Tennessee Living Time Machine. Please fasten your seatbelts and keep your arms and legs inside of the vehicle at all times. But to get going, we need your help. We still need to fire up that time machine to transport us. Please help us by clicking on the like, subscribe, and bell notification buttons down below. Not only does this fire up the time machine for our flight back in time, but it convinces the YouTube algorithm that we need a bigger vehicle to reach more people who love history as much as you do. Now, back to our story. As the Breathitt County News reports, this is the most complete section of this trial that we could currently find. More may come to light as digital conversion from the older newspapers and other information such as court documents become available online. But for now, this is what is given to everyone for the defense witness wrap-up. The May 5, 1905 Breathitt County News article will be used in this section. Quote, James Brophy was next introduced and testified as to what was happening about the time of the killing. Several witnesses were then put on the stand for the purpose of impeaching Mose Feltner and Jeff Smith, two important witnesses for the Commonwealth, but several of them had to admit on cross-examination that their own characters were not above suspicion. Alex Hargis was the last witness for the defense put on the stand, who made a general denial of any connection with the conspiracy to kill Cockrill or anyone else, unquote. Sadly, we are not given the testimony of James Brophy. This would have been a true find. It leaves us wondering, what did Brophy say that was contradicting Hargis and Ford? What did he know? Why was he testifying for the defense instead of for the prosecution or as a rebuttal witness? Did his testimony impeach Hargis and Ford? Was he himself impeached because of their testimony? We simply have not been given any clues. Hopefully, time will reveal what he said on the stand. We also see that the defense felt that the testimony of Mose Feltner was very important. They brought several witnesses to impeach his testimony. However, it seems that upon being cross-examined, their own characters did not bear weight, as they themselves were often on the other side of the law. Because of their reputations, it seems that their testimonies against Mose Feltner needed to be taken in that context. The last witness in this section of the story was Alex Hargis, who would deny ever being in the town of Jackson when the shots were fired that killed Town Marshal Cockrill. He would also deny wanting to kill Cockrill or anyone else. His testimony would be the last of the defense. And so now the defense case is closed, and now begins the rebuttal witnesses for the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Quote, the Commonwealth then introduced several witnesses who were residents of Leslie County, the home of Moses Feltner, and were leading citizens, and many of whom were officers or had held office in that county, who testified that the reputation of Moses Feltner as to truth and veracity was good, but that his moral character was bad, in that he had been accused of moonshining and getting into fights, unquote. So the Commonwealth comes out swinging when it comes to protecting the testimony of Moses Feltner. With the rebuttal witnesses, the prosecution is sort of conceding that Moses is not the most upright moral of characters. However, they are putting people on the stand that even though he is a moonshiner and does get into a lot of fights with people, this does not say that he is a liar. That those facts about Feltner are completely different from each other. The next rebuttal witness placed on the stand would defend the reputation of Jeff Smith. It is interesting that out of all the witnesses that the Hargis faction had to come against, that it was the testimonies of Smith, White, and Feltner that they worked the hardest to impugn. Quote, several leading citizens from Breathitt and Wolfe counties testified that Jeff Smith's reputation for truth and veracity was good. Several witnesses were there for the purpose of sustaining Ance White's reputation, but the defense objected to their being introduced on the grounds that they had not tried to impeach him, but had only contradicted him. Unquote. Uh-oh. We have an objection in the court concerning the testimony of Ance White. So what is the difference between impeaching and contradicting someone in court? They seem the same thing, right? Well, actually, there is a difference between the two. Impeachment of a witness refers to the process of discrediting them during the trial. This is usually done during the cross-examination to reveal their bias and or falsehood in their statements. This can also involve contradicting statements, but more evidence needs to be presented for impeachment. Contradiction is when a witness says two different statements in the same testimony that contradicts each other. This is different from inconsistent statements made outside of the court proceedings. So what the defense was trying to say is that they did not try to impeach Ance White, only try to show that his own statements contradicted each other. Therefore, the other witnesses were not needed or warranted in the trial evidence. We do not have a ruling about the objection. The Mount Vernon signal reports. Somewhere in the middle of the rebuttal witnesses, we find the testimony of Kurt Jett and Rufus Lyle. Jett had stood trial for the murder of Town Marshal James Cockrill, and Lyle was a banker whose testimony concerning Moses Feltner was critical. According to the Mount Vernon Signal, dated May 5, 1905, quote, Kurt Jett, convicted of the assassination of James B. Markham, was taken from the Frankfort Penitentiary and testified in the Hargis conspiracy case at Lexington. He refused to say anything that might incriminate him or anyone else. Rufus Lyle, a clerk in the Winchester Bank, testified that the president and cashier of the bank were away from Winchester, and he knew nothing of the note executed by James Hargis. The court issued an order for him to produce all of the books of the bank bearing on the note. More witnesses in rebuttal were introduced. Unquote. Kurt Jett's case was currently running through the Kentucky Court of Appeals. While he was found guilty of the crime of first-degree murder, he was hoping to have the decision overturned. He was not about to say anything that could jeopardize his chances with the appeal court. He was also not going to say who did what when it came to the plot surrounding the killing. Concerning the testimony of Rufus Lyle, even though he said nothing about what the money transpired concerning Judge Hargis could be used for, he would still be ordered to bring in the bank records so that they could be examined. This was very important because everything that Moses Feltner testified to in the case was concerning how he was paid off in the Markham trial to leave town with many witnesses. There was a paper trail if these statements were true, and they needed to be brought before the judge and jury for examination. In next week's video, we will cover the controversial jury instructions given by Judge Parker, the verdict, and how this would lead to an appeal to a higher court. Thank you. We at Kentucky Tennessee Living would like to thank you for watching our video series on the Appalachian feuds. Don't forget to hit that like button, as the more likes we receive, the more likely YouTube is to suggest our videos to other viewers. Also, to receive notice when we upload a new video, be sure to subscribe and click the bell notification button. Be sure to double check that you are subscribed, as some of our viewers are finding that they are no longer subscribed to our channel. We thank you for continuing to support Kentucky Tennessee Living as we are discovering the mysteries in Appalachian history.